Yeah, are you enjoying Nashville so far? Okay, so I love Nashville. I've been here for about 4 years now. When I first started working at the Daily Wire is what brought me here. So I want to give you a brief overview of kind of what I do right now, and then I want to dive back into what I would say is much more important issues of the day. So I started in this world of media and conservatism about 4 years ago, but prior to that, I studied broadcast journalism in college. So after I got into that world, I started doing videography on the side to learn the creative storytelling component, because I think that's an important thing to know. When you're in journalism, you gotta be very careful with the way you tell stories. So I learned that through wedding videos, so I started doing those, which are very fun. I recommend if you guys like doing that, get involved with those. But I did that for a while, and then COVID hit. So right as I graduated was when COVID hit, and I worked in social media marketing for a little bit to learn a little bit about social media. And then I was learning, though, even though I was doing that, I wasn't representing my values. The company I worked for, it wasn't anything that I really believed in. And so I wanted to dive into something that was much more aligned with the things I wanted to be talking about, which was conservative issues and Christian issues. So then I was gonna either go freelance and just try wedding videos and also try to start a YouTube channel, or I was going to apply for Daily Wire because I saw they had an opening. I listened to Ben Shapiro all the time. I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. Gave it a shot, and I got a job as a content creator at Daily Wire, and then I got engaged like 2 days later. So very quickly, my life transformed. So I moved to Nashville 4 years ago, and then my husband moved down a couple months later, and that's how I've been here ever since. So at Daily Wire specifically, which I had another Daily Wire employee, my Steph, my producer's in the back, so hey, Steph, she's crushing it. But at Daily Wire, started as a content creator, and I was posting anything and everything that we were creating, which I don't know if you guys follow us, but at the time, we were posting, every 15 minutes I was publishing like little articles on Facebook. It was nonstop all the time. And then I started to get involved with the reporting. So they had done like little Facebook videos where we were doing little reports every day of what was going on. I was like, hey guys, I have a reporting background. Can I do this? And over time, I got more and more involved in that. And we started a Snapchat show. So it was really fun. So I got to start in that world and really learn that. And then this little show called The Comment Section started. And very quickly, it wasn't a little show anymore. So we had to start a big team. It grew very fast, which also Steph was part of that team as well. So we got huge, and we had to work our butts off. So then I started working as an associate producer, a producer, and then I hosted it, obviously, the last year. So a lot of change happened very quickly. And then now I'm doing Reported by Reagan on YouTube, which is so much fun. Love that. I'll get into that later. But what I want to talk about, and I think what is the most important thing, I could spend a lot of time talking about my career, what I do, but that's not actually going to contradict the message that I want to share with you guys today. Because I recently learned a perspective, and one that I wish I'd had in your shoes right now. I've learned more about myself, about femininity, and about purpose in the last 3 months of my life than in the rest of my 29 years combined, because I just had a baby, and my son, Penn, is right back there watching. He may or may not cry at some point, and if he does, it's okay, because he's a baby, so. But yeah, he is really cute. I'm biased. I'll watch him the whole time. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, though. I never said, I want to be a mom when I was introducing myself or saying what I wanted to do when I got older. And it's funny, though, I would always say, and one day I'll be a mom, too. It was always kind of like on the back burner. And I guess I find that funny now because I do believe it is the most important position I will ever hold, bar none, yet the entirety of my life leading up to this was not centered around that at all. It was focused on career. My sister and I were actually just talking about this, how literally everything we do in our lives and in this society really is led toward career. You have career day, right, in first grade, and you say, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? That's always asked. And then, as you get older, maybe you're focused on your grades, you're focused on school to get into a college. Maybe in high school, you'll take that family class. I don't know if any of you guys had that, public school people out there, but you essentially take home a baby, and you get to watch the baby for 48 hours, and the baby cries, and you kind of hate the baby by the end, and you want to give it back because it's just a doll, and then you kind of put that out of your mind forever, right? Like, that was an experience. And then you're focused on grades again, getting a career. And when you get your career, you want to get to the next spot. You want to get to the next position. And that's just how it goes. Pretty soon, though, you're in your late 20s. You might be thriving in your career, having fun, but suddenly you are hit with this realization that someday I want to be a mom part of your life will only happen if you actually start making steps to make that happen, which is where I found myself about a year and a half ago. It was the most daunting position I would ever hold. I knew that was going to be hard, and so I think it was subconsciously the thing I kind of kept kicking down the curb a little bit. I thought that suddenly there would be a time in my life where it would hit me and I would go, oh yeah, now I'm ready. Now everything is aligned, my career is perfect, this is perfect, it's now time. And newsflash for myself and probably many of you, that time's not really ever gonna come where it's perfect and everything makes sense. And frankly, I even think back now, I'm so glad that I allowed that to just kind of release that thing that I needed of like, things need to be perfect. It was never gonna be. And having him is like, I could get now I'm a mom, I guess I get emotional quickly, but it's the most incredible thing ever. So anyways, best part. But why do I say all this? Why do I talk about this? Well, because I think that the place that motherhood holds in society needs to be changed. It needs to be uplifted. It needs to be better because it's so important. It's that important. It's really the singular most important job that has to be performed for society to move forward, and also a job that is exclusive for women. Yet what's taught often is how to obviously avoid getting pregnant, becoming a mom, but rarely are we ever taught, how to be a mom or how to do it well. Our entire upbringing is focused on careers. So I'd like to reframe that a bit for you guys today, because I think conservatism only works if a country has a strong moral fabric. And a strong moral fabric is woven by strong family units. And strong, God-fearing individuals make up those family units and keep the country moving forward. So if our movement is built on the idea of families, it's on mothers and it's on women. We're the caretakers of the souls and of our homes, the safe place for everyday life. That is a profound job, guys. It's a God-given responsibility, too. It really is that big of a deal. I hear some women say, if they're stay-at-home moms, well, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. No, you're not just a stay-at-home mom. Are you kidding me? You know how hard it is to take care of a household, first of all, let alone having a kid or multiple kids into that equation? That's a huge job, way more than a 40-hour work week. And again, the most important. So before I get into discussions more about my career or about conservatism at large, I want to lay that framework. Because the most important job is kind of already innate within us, to care and to nurture. Whether that be with motherhood, or whether that be the friend or the family member or the neighbor, caring for them is what we do really well, and we should do more of that. It's something I think we need to do to keep our community strong and keep the country moving forward, and also, we gotta lean into our nature, not against it. Instead, though, the radical feminists of yesteryear, they loved to do exactly that. They actually had a very hefty and successful initiative to divorce the mother from the family unit, to divorce the woman from her biology. So much so that now you don't even need the biology of a woman to call yourself one, as we all know, unfortunately. But ironically, that is actually exactly what the OG feminists wanted. This is just a quote from them, so I will let them speak for a moment. The end goal of feminist revolution must be not just the elimination of male privilege, but of the sex distinction itself. That was Shula Smith Firestone. Wonderful lady, I'll talk about her later. But that's what they wanted, and they got it. It worked. But their dismantling of the foundations, the fundamental truths, started in the home. The feminists really, really wanted to do everything in their power to enlighten the domesticated mother, to see her home as a cage, and her biology as something that was a handicap that was holding her back. Rather than women in the 60s and 70s, using their freedoms and their voices to empower women with our bodies and what we do and how incredible they are, no, they wanted to try to find the way to reject anything that made us different from men. And as women, we are fully equal in the eyes of God with men, of course. But just as our bodies are not designed the same way, our roles are often not quite the same either, and that's okay. Unlike men, we have more of those nurturing tendencies, and again, we have this ability to bring life into the world, which is the most mind-boggling thing ever, having just birthed a human. It blew my mind, and I will never be the same. The gift of pregnancy and motherhood is exactly what the feminists chose to target. In this way to equalize the sexes, our superpower became this injury that needed to be fixed. That instead of a gift, it should be viewed as this form of oppression. Now, just 2 weeks ago, I made a video talking about this, and I was holding my son in his nursery, and I just simply said that this is the best thing ever, and shame on those who call this oppression, because it's distorting society in so many ways. And ironically, I got a lot of feminists triggered in the comments. I honestly didn't even know that was a controversial take. I thought that was kind of obvious, but a lot of women got mad, and they said, well, we never said that. I didn't even call it the feminists by name, but I was happy to kind of come back and say, well, actually, yes, you did. And your feminist ancestors said exactly that. One woman, again, Shula Smith Firestone, I love to quote her because she was very radical. She said, the heart of women's oppression is her childbearing and child-rearing roles. That was in her book. It's still used in gender studies today. Now, Firestone wanted women to be freed from any notion of reproduction because that apparently makes us slaves to our biology. She called pregnancy barbaric, and she wanted abortion and IVF readily available so that women would not be dependent on these male-dominated institutions, as she called them. In fact, she wanted embryos to be in artificial wombs. That was her hope for the future, so that women would not be subjected to the tyranny of reproduction. She used any example of sacrifice that we have to give as women or mothers as evidence of our supposed oppression. So if women, she thought, were freed from this burden, then she dreamed of a better world in which actually the nuclear family would just combust altogether. she actually wanted to abolish that structure and replace it with groups of adults called households. So it wasn't a husband and wife, they didn't have to love each other, just some adults in a house that would just raise a random baby. That was her goal. Now the irony is that Firestone never married, she never had kids, she was later diagnosed with severe mental health issues, which she battled the rest of her life. But the gender studies majors never mention that part of her story. She fundamentally does not understand the concept of sacrifice with children, let alone why sacrifice is so important, why it's biblical. It's a love that is the principle of the Christian faith. And as mothers, we get a small glimpse of what that gets to feel like and what that love is. Now, Firestone, she wasn't fringe. And the idea of sacrificing anything at all for others or for children is really foreign in a lot of society right now. It's all about us. What do we want? What's best for me? Sacrifice is bad. Anything that's hard is bad, which is not true, but that's what they believe. In fact, it's so bad to sacrifice, it's actually completely okay and encouraged to sacrifice your own children as to not be inconvenienced. Now, if you reinforce the idea of oppression enough to women, especially through the lens of motherhood, it will stick because it's already hard enough to be a mom, right? There are already challenges that come with that. And sacrifice is hard. So if you vilify motherhood, if you demonize it, and if you belittle it, then pretty soon you're going to get a generation of women who outright reject it on principle. Welcome to the 2020s. I'm sure you guys are seeing this right now. Yet I find their movement, the radical feminists' most effective marketing and messaging was their most subversive and what still lingers today. Think about your favorite movies or TV shows for a second. How many of the lead characters, the lead women, were moms? Especially growing up, I didn't have many. My favorite shows I think about, was like, that wasn't really a thing. Or the mom is a background feature, the child is maybe a nuisance. That's typically how it's presented. And I think that obviously does a lot of harm. I know that most of you in this room aren't quite in that stage of life, except I have seen some pregnant women around. So we're kind of in that season of starting to think about that at least. So why am I harping though so much on motherhood? Well, I wanted to talk about it first because it's the most important thing that you can think about and view your world through right now, even in this era of your life. It's not just a decade from now when you want to have kids, it's now. And even if you don't want to have kids, it's still important, and here's why. I think it's the first thing that fell in the war on women with the feminists, and the first thing that we as conservative women need to build back up and need to strengthen. There is a framework that everybody sees the world through. And for a long time now, that framework has been institutionalized from these radical feminists that I was just quoting. Regardless of where you are in your journey through womanhood, we need to build out a new framework, one that doesn't vilify or demonize something like motherhood, but rather it celebrates it, and we shift a community mindset around working to support mothers and working mothers and help them flourish and figure out ways to combat the challenges that women face today being moms in this society. Now, am I saying abandon all other missions that you're going after, marry the first guy in your contact list and start having babies? No, definitely not. But what I am saying is that live your life now with the intentionality of one day building a family or building out a community. That affects the way that you spend your time right now. It affects who you surround yourself with. It affects who and how you date. Looking at the world through the lens of mothers provides intense clarity on so many issues that we face as conservatives today. Just think about strong borders or education, pro-life matters, foreign wars, heck, even our health and the way we treat our own bodies. I unknowingly lived with endometriosis for the last decade, and I had no idea until I had the desire to finally get pregnant. And I've watched countless friends try to quickly prep their bodies for fertility in their late 20s that we wish we would have been doing a decade sooner. But we hadn't been viewing our lives through this lens of motherhood until, again, one day just hits you in the face. So I think we should be doing that much sooner. Again, it just changes your viewpoint on the world. Now, there are countless ways to live out the hands and feet of the conservative movement in real time. It starts in the household and in the town, and I think it starts small and effectively it stays small. We don't want the big government breathing down our necks or taking care of all of our problems for us. We certainly don't want them raising our babies or teaching them what morals they should have. That is the job of the local community, of the church, of the family, and of the household. See, it's always coming back to the household. So whether right now that looks like an empty apartment or a dorm full of your best friends, you can establish the core tenets of tradition and conservatism and femininity right now. Now, speaking of the household, I have spent the last few months at my home almost exclusively, which I've never really done before, just 3 months of just literally doing nothing but holding this human that's now my responsibility. And the identity that I found in my career and in my productiveness or my style or my social life has all just been paused. And thankfully, because I've spent the last couple of years starting to hone in on that more positive framework about valuing femininity and more feminine roles, it has made my time at home and the challenges that come with that much easier and more beautiful. Though it certainly is hard at times, it is a season of refinement and sacrifice that I believe is building me into a better version of myself. And I can say that and see that because of that more positive framework that I'm viewing this season and motherhood around. Now, while I firmly believe that our most important work happens within the walls of our home, obviously there is so much that we can and should do for the world at large. Careers are not inherently bad by any means, just prioritized in the right order of who we are rather than what we do. Because I believe we all have God-given gifts and dreams worth pursuing for a reason. And for many of us, many of you right now, you're living out that calling in a lot of ways, whether that's your work at school or the organizations like this one or the workforce. It's funny though, I tried to turn off all work-related matters while I was on my maternity leave recently, and I couldn't. And I think it only shows the need for the work that we still have to do. 3 of the 3 shows that I was trying to watch during maternity leave all had an abortion storyline in it. And I'm sitting watching these shows, being nap-trapped, trying to do anything, and I'm fed this 3 different times. And of course, the story was, well, the baby would impede her life, her singing career, her ambition. And so 2 out of the 3, the girl got an abortion, and the other one was heavily considering it when I turned off the show, because again, it immediately angered me. But it brought me back into my calling and my career mindset of knowing that millions of young women are currently watching these same shows and subconsciously consuming storylines telling them that it's better to abort your child than to divert the course of your life in any fashion. Because again, it's better to essentially sacrifice your child than your convenience. That's what's being taught. Now, after the 3rd show, I turned it off, and I sat there holding my baby, and my heart broke for this generation. So I look at this beautiful group of young women here today, and this gives me hope, because it's a gnarly world out there. But you guys are bold enough to be here, bold enough to be involved in new chapters and take the extra step of getting involved in leadership and then traveling out to Nashville because you're that passionate about this mission. So you all give me hope, because knowing that this fight often feels like kind of yelling into this dark void, I truly believe, and ultimately I think that we will see light being restored and brought back to culture, but it's hard and it's going to take many, many of us. So how exactly do we do this effectively? Well, let me ask you this. If you saw someone who gossiped all the time, would you share a secret with her? Probably not. What about someone who has a Bible verse in their Instagram bio and then is the first to leave hate comments? Yeah, feels pretty hypocritical, right? So you would question her heart, you would question her foundational beliefs. Heck, you probably will outright reject anything that she believes just based on the way you've seen her walk out her life. And I think this is really key for how we influence a nation, both online and in real life. If we want people to be receptive to our ideas of conservatism, we have to live out the ideals in our own lives. Again, it all starts at home, it starts small. For instance, we don't really, as conservatives, believe in the welfare state ruining families and getting super involved. That might be a confusing pill to swallow for someone, especially someone who doesn't really understand the weeds of policy and getting to the nuance of how that's actually damaging society and all that stuff. But it would make more sense, it would soften the message coming from someone who also volunteers at a local food bank and is serving their community in ways that it should be, rather than that utter reliance of the helping hand of the government. How about the always hot topic of abortion, right? And the accusation that as conservatives, we only care about the baby or the unborn baby, we don't care about the moms. Are we serving at our local pregnancy centers? Are we meeting the women who are struggling? And are we helping and loving them? Because I think it's from those positions of strength from which we can effectively shine our light and share the conservative message, being those hands and feet. It will make you more empathetic too in the process, which is always a good thing, but most importantly, it'll make you informed about the real needs of the community and of those who are suffering. So, and especially for those of you, if anyone wants to be policymakers one day, you'll know what needs to be done. Especially if you think about the way influencer culture works in this day and age. So whether you're influencing 20 people or 200,000, the example that you set is instrumental in the influence that comes from it. It is really exciting, the media environment that we're currently living in. I mean, so much different than even a decade ago. Our voices can quite quickly be heard by the masses. They can also cause real impact and assist in change pretty quickly. I mean, you've just seen someone like Riley Gaines, right? Just a couple years ago, she was a swimmer, she wanted to be a dentist, and very quickly, she became this voice of reason for millions of people because she was willing to be brave and bold enough with her beliefs. And in an environment that often echoes the same things back and forth, that voice stands out amongst the crowd. But also, unfortunately, with that reality comes the fact that you may get backlash and vitriol, which I'm sure some of you have felt in different instances of your life with this. Sticking your neck out there for the things you believe in will then get the arrows kind of turned at you. And it's still worth it, but unfortunately, I can attest that it is not always smooth, easy sailing out there. And my biggest piece of advice especially for withstanding any backlash that may come your way, is to arm yourself with something that no arrow can penetrate. For me, that is the armor of God. Now, in the Bible, Paul talks a lot about the armor of God, and specifically he talks about the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. And about taking heat, talking about taking heat, I mean, Paul, he had to do that a lot. He was trying to actively correct society, but he didn't have it easy at all. But his words ultimately were etched in time. And he was listened to with such reverence. Why? Well, largely in part because of the way that he lived out his life. Again, he walked the walk. So although the words that he was saying were often bold, sometimes harsh, they were received and ultimately listened to. So study that armor and get to know it, because it's for your protection, but also for the protection of others. Like, for instance, the belt of truth. Because we have to remember that online and having this ability to be vocal and engage in open forum also comes with a very heavy responsibility to be truth tellers. The tongue can be a very lethal weapon, as we all know, and unfortunately, most of us in the conservative movement right now, we're seeing the power of the tongue be used for slander and insults and attacks back and forth to people. I mean, just open up X, which frankly I try to avoid because sometimes it is crazy on there, but there's a lot of vitriol and anger. And it feels like some of those who might get the most views and the most clicks are also the ones who kind of remove that belt of truth and kind of put it to the side for a little bit. I think it's in our quest to be right. Sometimes people forget that our words are going to have to stand up to God, though, when we give accounts for our lives. So we have to steward the gifts that he gave well, but be careful not to weaponize them just in a quest to prove a point or to get more clicks or to make some moment of temporary praise. Just because you say you're a truth seeker or a truth teller doesn't inherently make you one. You have to walk it out. And then we can all look at the fruit and see. Now, again, time and time again, the way that you live ultimately advocates for your cause and is the ultimate advocacy for your cause. As the armor of God, though, is what will embolden you to go into this battle. The truth of God and our God-given roles and identity will be what brings you peace in any battle. So whether that storm is caused by the random haters on the internet or a culture that is largely trying to rip you from who you were designed to be, that will protect you. We are currently the freest, I would argue, most privileged women in all of human history right now. So what a blessing that we get to live in this time. It's really cool. And yet, overall, our measurable joy as women is lower than ever before. On its surface, that data doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This occurred despite the substantial gains we had in education and employment and legal rights and political representation. The phenomenon became known as the paradox of declining female happiness. Women's self-reported happiness declined both absolutely and relative to men's. When did that start, you might ask? Well, the early 1970s. Ironically, or unironically, the same time that these radical feminists changed the conversation, changed the reverence around what is praiseworthy and what is a praiseworthy goal as a female, and what is just a comfortable concentration camp, as one feminist called the home. We as women have been detached from our purpose, from our biology, from our children, from our spouses, and our Creator for decades. And we need to reattach that as soon as possible. We need to set a new framework, view our femininity through a new lens, and then ultimately live out the culture that we seek to create. Thank you, guys.